Yo, welcome to My Political Mind. Tonight is a special night, as tonight I have my first guest. Um, it's gonna be.
What up?
There should be a fun conversation. He's already talking, even though nobody can see him yet. But that's cool. Let's just go right to him. Let's go right to. This is my older brother, David Whelan.
Good evening.
In case you're wondering, yes, we are both David Wieland. It's
Yep. I think for the purposes of this, we'll go with you'll hear Bud and DW for a lot of the interaction.
you possibly, yeah, that's possible. So, but yeah, this should be fun. I'm pretty excited for this episode in particular. Anyway, what's up, man? How you been?
Hey, well, 2020 has got us all in a bad way. First, let me say, as you know this, but I also told you before we did this, there's the required disclaimer before any media interactions for anybody. But as you said, I am also Dave Whelan. I'm an active duty Army officer. And I have to say that the views expressed here do not reflect that of the U.S. Army, the DOD, or the U.S. government in any way, and all opinions are my own. So with that, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me. No, it took a couple of days for us to get this going.
Yeah.
Schedules being what they are, COVID lockdown, restrictions, and regular kids' schedule. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. I've been looking forward to this for a few days now. As you said, it's been, a little hectic the past couple of days, but we finally pinned it down and ready to go. Is that a sponsorship? Starbucks.
Let me introduce you to my friend, Coors Light, the world's most refreshing beer. It actually says so on the can.
It says it on the can, so.
And you can tell when it's cold and refreshing because the mountains are blue.
Absolutely. Oh,
You want to tell the story about why I love Coors Light?
Why do you love Coors Light?
Okay, I don't mean to derail your podcast, but
no, you're good.
About why I love Coors Light.
Let's go.
Okay, so I never, Dad liked Coors Light. He always drank Coors Light, and I had a Miller Lite all the time when we'd hang out, and but I never really cared for it much. But when I was on my first deployment, I was in Afghanistan for like 90 days in.
Oh, before you go any further, what's your occupation?
Oh, I said in the disclaimer, I'm an active duty U.S. Army officer.
Okay, just want to make sure everybody got that. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So I'm on my first deployment, right? 2016, deployed in February, about 90 days in. Is roughly around when spring break starts to happen in various places around the country. I guess this is a vague recollection as far as time frame. But I had, we still had internet access because I was in a pretty big place, Kandahar. So periodically I'd be scrolling through Instagram, right? And I'd come across posts from people I both know and don't know. And there seemed to be a theme that year. And it was Coors Light was especially popular. You got your 18 or your 24, your 24 can case of beer in your Yeti cooler down at the beach, doing all kinds of body luges of various types. Anyway, it was just a recurring theme, and it was just driving home the idea that at least the reminder daily that I was in a place where it was 106 degrees outside. It hadn't rained since I'd been there. I had to wear this, the pickle suit all day, every day, and carry a weapon around. And I was sweating to death, and I hated the heat, and it was miserable. And then in my downtime, I had the opportunity to scroll across a video of some dude smashing 2 cans of Coors Light together to pour all over his face. And I have never seen anything that looked more appealing and refreshing to me than those videos of ice cold Coors Light. So
awesome.
I vowed at that moment, like, the first thing I'm going to have when I get home from this deployment is going to be an ice cold Coors Light. And here's the best part.
Coors Light, Coors is going to call you and they're going to be like, can we put this in an ad?
Here's the best part, right? So I maintain that vow. I might be embellishing this just a little bit, but the honest to God truth is, I told Dad, and he was at the Special Events Center at Fort Carson with Candace and the kids the day I got there. And we did the hugs and, tears were shed, and I was happy to see everybody. And it really did. It was great to see, my mom and dad and everybody that was there after that long and miserable deployment. But when we got home, Dad opened the trunk of the rental car he and Linda had, and guess what was in the trunk? A cooler with an ice cold Coors Light, 15 ounce. I took it out back and I shotgunned that son of a bitch right away.
Yes,
and
sir.
That was my first drink back from my first deployment.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was
Man.
really great. And I've been a Coors man ever since.
Man, we're both coughing up a little bit of a storm here, but I think
it's the weather's changing.
I think we'll get
and
through
I think we're effectively distanced.
I think so. Yeah. So, anyway, so let's get to the nitty-gritty here. Let's talk some politics.
All right.
This is my political mind, which is
I can't just tell beer stories all day.
Nah, I mean we could just go. We could just be a Joe Rogan style podcast, and we can just go and just talk. But
I don't want to derail you. Just but once in a while, I'll have some of my favorite stories to tell, and I'll just drop those in.
That's fine. It's perfect. Beautiful. Love it. So, what exactly? Before we get started here, would you want to give your overall political tilt?
Sure.
So just so people can get to know you a little better, and before we even start the conversation, they can, it can be an honest conversation for the listener. So.
Sure. Got to give people a good reason to hate me off the bat, right? First thing, I am an Elizabeth Warren supporting Democrat, and I have been a Democrat since the 2000 election.
So technocrat?
I am. I'm a pragmatist. I think it's fair to characterize my political ideas as those that that are tilted towards collectivism a little, with respect to capitalist policies that got us to the America we are today. But in my personal opinion, it is social policies enacted by government at the right time in tandem with a capitalist economic engine that brought us to the global hegemon that America is today. And I'd like to see both the preservation of that and the slow and incremental but steady progress towards a more equitable society. And then reasonable people can disagree about what those specific policies are, but that is how I'd best describe what I believe.
So have you always had these beliefs, or did you have them before you got in the military? Was the military any part of you growing these beliefs, or did it just make your beliefs stronger, or?
No, so the way I would characterize this portion is the military has drastically influenced how I view geopolitics and intergovernmental relations, and how I see the mechanism by which sovereign states interact to achieve a desired end state, right? I couple my military time with my education, which was focused, in international relations under the broad spectrum of political science. Couple those together, and the way I view the world has drastically changed. However, the way I view domestic policy has not, insofar as they affect each other. Sometimes you need a certain domestic policy to enact foreign policy. That may have some interaction. There may be some interplay between those two ideas, but largely I am a Democrat because, and a leftist and a person tilted toward collectivism because I grew up poor. The single, if you've done any research on Freakonomics and the underlying research that they did, pretty much every data point by reasonable economists and sociologists would tell you the single best indicator for somebody's political leaning is a combination of three things. It's their socioeconomic status that they're born into, the education they're able to attain, whether because of or in spite of that socioeconomic status, and then their gender. Those three things tell you more about how somebody's going to vote in a particular election or the views they're going to adhere to than anything else. And it's no different for me. I grew up poor, largely to a single mother who was a service member. And I have seen firsthand the mechanism by which government intervention on a large scale can improve the lives of capable and desirous people. So if you want it bad enough, and there's a way, oftentimes that way is provided by government intervention into a particular socioeconomic status, you can pull yourself out of that. This idea of Americans pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, it's a great story, but largely, more often than you'd like to believe, is a result of some form of federal or state government policy that's enabled somebody to do so.
Right.
I recognize that because that's true for me. I think it could be true for far more people if the government had the means and the willpower to do it. So that's why I'm a Democrat. I see the way in which government can be an arbiter for the people, and I'm a beneficiary of it.
So what would you say? So you keep repeating, that's why I'm a Democrat. So what is it that you oppose regarding the Republican Party? What makes them separate from Democrats? What makes Democrats better than the Republican Party ideologically? So you keep talking about the poor with Democrats and all that stuff. And I heard an argument earlier today talking about how if it wasn't for the government providing subsidies to colleges, then colleges wouldn't jack up their tuition prices because they already know that they're going to get all that money from the government. So why not jack up their tuition prices so that the government pays for those?
That's not necessary. So let's talk a little bit of specific policy as it relates to universities, publicly funded universities, misnomer. And then we'll go into the broader spectrum of the difference between, in my opinion, between Republicans and Democrats. So first and foremost, universities, right? Usually the publicly funded ones get a certain amount of dollars directly allocated from the state, right? A lot of times the federal government has funding in the budget to give to states to give to their state universities, right? That's all well and good. That is a federal subsidy to counteract the rising cost of tuition, right?
Right.
However, this brings us to my current pet issue that I think is the one I'm most interested in following in the near term, student debt relief. So the system we have since the Bush administration has been the federal government has insured all student loans, right? These federal student loans through the FAFSA. That's not to say there aren't private student loans, there are, but every single person fills out a FAFSA to apply for federal student loans. And if you meet certain criteria, you will get a federal student loan.
Right.
So they hold all this loan debt, right? Well, it's much like anything else that's federally insured, or the same concept with banks being risky when they were, trading credit swap derivatives and all this other, Wall Street stuff that I don't particularly understand. But the principle is the same. People are willing to take risk because they know the government is going to insure it, but will back it up. Right? So with that knowledge, a university can say, well, we don't change our admittance criteria or our admissions criteria, who we admit, but we can increase the number based on that criteria. And then especially if we target, X, Y, and Z minority or poor people who qualify for federal loans, we know we'll get that money because the government's going to pay it to us, whether they finish school or not. It was a concept that was promulgated initially by the for-profit colleges, things like DeVry and ITT Tech and what were the other early ones? Phoenix, right? University of Phoenix.
Still
all
getting
these
mail
little
from them.
places could still, they could, it's not to say they didn't benefit some people, but the business model was predicated on you take some federal student loans, you come to school here and you got to finish, or you're going to end up, not being able to transfer, but that's no skin off our back because we're going to get that money. Large scale state universities recognize the same thing, and they do it also, but to not to such a large extent. And it's unfortunate. And because of that semi-predatory business model by universities and the free flow of cash ensured by the federal government, you've seen a massive explosion in tuition costs, which is why we have such a huge student debt bubble. We haven't educated and produced as many degrees as we should have for that amount of dollars. Our efficiency rating, right? The number of dollars per degree nationwide has decreased, even as correspondingly with the increase in tuition, and that's unfortunate. And it's one of the big reasons why I'm such a strong proponent for student debt relief. The other reason is purely economic. I can talk about my opinion on that, but we'll get to that in the future. You can come back to that. The other thing I want to talk about was you asked me, what do I see as the primary difference between the parties, right? To answer that question, I think you and I both know that on the large scale, political spectrum, if you're looking at the entire world, Republicans and Democrats in America have historically been basically this close on the spectrum while everybody else is off the screen, right?
Right.
You're slightly left and slightly right relative to the proportional representation.
Well, I would say that we are actually, I believe that the Democrats of the U.S. are actually more center right, whereas the Republicans are far right compared to the rest of, the developed world.
Sure, and that's, really your assessment of any party in the United States is going to be subjective and dependent on each person. But I could understand the argument if you were to make that, right? That relative to the rest of the world, to proportional representation, parliamentary democracies, we are actually, Democrats and Republicans are both right of center. One is just closer to center. I could see that argument, but there's a fundamental difference between the two, right? And it is the public admission of that for which they stand, right? So Republicans will tell you that they stand for all the same things Democrats do: working class, helping the poor. They'll give you lip service towards protecting individual liberties and freedom and all these other things, but all of that's a ruse, right? Because when they're in office, all of a sudden deficits don't matter, the debt doesn't matter, huge tax cuts are the only thing that's going to save us all, and propagating foreign policy that only serves to isolate America. None of which, if you combine all those things, all those data points, who does that help? It helps fucking rich people. Sorry for the F-bomb, but that's who it helps. There is no two ways about that. You can't clearly articulate with data-driven conclusions that it helps anybody more than just rich people. Whereas a Democrat or a leftist or a center-left person in America, or most independents in America, when they run for office, they say, we want social policies that collectively benefit the largest amount of people. And sometimes that's going to mean more taxes on rich people, but we can fund education, we can fund transportation, we can fund infrastructure, we can spur the economy, we can strengthen the middle class so that the next time there's a shock to the economic system, we don't have to scramble to bail people out because they'll have the ability to sustain
they'll have
themselves.
the bailout.
And this idea, when you put these two ideas for who their policies benefit side by side, hang on, there's one final point, and you look at who it actually benefits, then you have to ask, the last question you ask is, what do they stand to gain? Well, you and I both have talked to family members and when we ask, why would a scientist advocate for policies to stop climate change? Or why would economists advocate for policies to help the poor? Or why would politicians want to fund education? And we hear them say things like, climate scientists are just in it for the grant money. And economists just want to, they're trying to buy power to stay in, quote unquote, stay in power. And they're power hungry, corrupt Democrats. It's like, every assessment of somebody's policy should come with a critical look at what they stand to gain. And Democrats don't stand to gain near as much because their policies are helping other people. And if you think that it is a corrupt power grab to help as many people as possible so then they vote you back into office so you continue to help people, then you got a twisted view of the world and you're all kinds of effed up. Republicans, on the other hand, see everything as transactional and everything as zero sum. If these poor brown people are doing well over here, that means we must be hurting these rich white people, and we can't have that. That's a Republican.
Yeah, zero sum
right?
game. Yeah.
Almost every policy can be boiled down to some skewed view that comes to the same principle. Brown poor people doing good means rich white people doing bad, and they can't stomach it. Okay,
Just
sorry,
so
that was a long rant, but
that's fine. Just so everybody knows, if you see me looking over to my right, that is because the video feed for my brother is to my right. So I'm trying to look at the camera, but also look over here because, we're having a conversation. So it's kind of weird for me to not look at him. It's
if you
just.
see me looking one way or another, I don't know if the video's up, but if you do, it's because I have ADHD and can't focus on a single thing at the same time.
This is live. Oh no! Don't tell me I didn't go live. No, I went live. I'm just kidding. I might need to see. I might need to check. But in the meantime, so let's talk about 2020.
Okay.
What a year.
It has, in fact, been a year.
Oh man! All right. So at the beginning of the year, we have what? The Australian fires.
Oh no! Hang on, I got another story. All right.
Seriously?
Yeah, I got another story. It's about the beginning of 2020, but you're gonna have to give me 1 minute. I got to step away for just a second.
Well, actually, first of all, I got engaged on New Year's Day, New Year's Eve.
Oh yeah.
And then 2020 happened.
Then it took a shit.
Like,
at least it started good for you. Excuse
right.
me 1 second. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, while he's gone, I'm gonna check the status.
1 minute. I got to
this
step away
video.
for just a second.
What'd you say? What? I know I'm low. This is the part of the live stream, babe. Like,
all right, I'm back.
Actually, they can't hear you. It's fine. Okay. Back again.
All right,
back
so
again.
We were talking about 2020, right?
Yes.
How it started. All right, so it began for me. I was in Syria, and we were doing our support operations, and if you recall, what just happened? You still there? There we go. So if I recall correctly, it was January 2nd or 3rd, or I don't remember which day it was, but the first memory I have of 2020 was, hey, everybody, we just schwacked this Iranian dude, right? Which was, I forget his name, but he was honestly, I shouldn't forget his name in my job, but I forget his name. But he was the IRGC leader, which is an Iranian, not front, it's an Iranian organization that helps facilitate, terrorist organizations.
Wait, was that the guy that everybody, we killed him? He was like a general or something. Everybody was like, "Oh, we're definitely going to war now."
Yeah, General Soleimani, I think was his name.
Yeah, Soleimani.
Qasim Soleimani, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Listen,
yeah.
If anybody I work with sees this, understand I'm the worst intelligence officer in the world. Okay, so cut me some slack. Anyway, we schwacked this dude, right? And much as I hate, much as I disagree with the certain person who holds office, I can't say getting rid of him was a bad thing. However, we were concerned, as people deployed, everybody deployed was a little concerned about, hey, where was that going to take America? right? Everybody's talking on social media about going to war. We see that stuff when we're downrange. Like, we see and we hear about it. And
I mean, it was all over Twitter.
But yeah, without saying anything, revealing about, where we were, what we were doing, we were concerned that things would happen to us, and we took precautions. But those precautions, the night that, if you remember,
yeah, you were actually overseas at the time, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. If you remember the night that Iran fired those rockets and they shot down that one Ukrainian plane.
Yep.
Yeah. Nobody knew where those rockets were going to go, so everybody was taking precautions. And I was laying in a ditch, like a 14-foot ditch they had dug out to build the berms at our fob, and I was laying in the ditch. It was about 38 degrees. It was raining. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning. We were just laying there, hoping we didn't get blowed up. And it was miserable. I was cold. I was muddy. I was wet. I was pissed. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was hoping I didn't lose. I was literally laying there in the dark with my nods on, hoping, okay, don't lose any of my gear. Don't lose anything. Don't lose any SI, because I'm signed for all this stuff. And I'm hoping all my guys that are there with me, that work for me, they didn't lose any of their stuff either. Because like, I'd have been in trouble for that. And, unless an actual missile comes and hits us, I'm not getting off the hook. I'd have been paying for that shit. So that's how my 2020 began. And I thought it was going to improve, but it didn't. I redeployed the day before the Army instituted their new travel and quarantine policy, which is the first time they did it this year, which was March 10th. I got back March 10th, March 11th. They said, hey, if you come back from overseas, you got to quarantine for 14 days. And then it's been a steady juggling act of various, policies and surges in COVID cases and stuff ever since. It hasn't just affected me and us in the military. It's affected everybody. I can imagine what it's like for civilians whose paycheck isn't guaranteed, who have a job. They might get some sort of state or federal assistance that lasted a couple of weeks, couple of month. That's $600 a week for unemployment stuff.
Yeah, 2 or 3 months. Yeah,
and it didn't. It didn't. I mean, here we are still in the highest peaks of COVID cases nationwide.
We're gonna get to that. Yeah,
across the country, and nobody's. Those benefits ended 5 months ago. So
right.
I can imagine what 2020 has been like for everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. It's been pretty rough. I mean, I've been pretty fortunate. My job was considered essential, so throughout all of it, continue making money. And there are a lot of those. There are a lot of people out there. We have an eviction crisis on our hands, and once the moratorium, once that lifts, I don't know. But I don't know if Joe Biden will let that happen. I don't know when it's supposed to lift.
The moratorium on what?
On they freeze. They froze like mortgages and rent and all that. So.
Oh yeah.
To give people, I don't understand why they can't just take the months that they've missed and just put that on the back end.
That's something they could do, but it depends on how specific things are derived, right? If you look at, for example, a mortgage, right? If I'm a mortgage company and I issued out 100 mortgages in 2019, right? I got 100 people paying me their mortgage payment plus interest plus they're also making homeowners insurance payments, all that good stuff, right? But I own that debt still. I haven't sold it off to anybody. This is very basic, by the way. I'm not an economist, or I don't work in financial management, but this is as I understand it. So I own that debt for 100 homes that people bought using my financing, right? If you suspend that, I lose the requirement for them to pay. I lose that ability to I have no capital. I have no money flowing in. So my ability to turn around and lend to the next guy is now suspended. Plus, whatever personal bills I have, I can't pay. Now, granted, maybe my mortgage is suspended. Cool. But like, I still got to eat. I still got to do other things. There's also the fact that the government's ability to say you don't have to pay this is also dependent on the method by which a loan or something has been guaranteed. If I own that debt, I can come to you. There's no law, to my knowledge, that says you can't, they don't owe you money. No, they owe me the money, and I can and will repossess the house, right? Put them in foreclosure as the bank. But if I'm a federally insured bank that receives funding or follows certain rules, maybe there is a mechanism by which they can say, hey, you can't foreclose on them. But at some point, money along that chain, whether it's me lending to homeowners or other banks that have lended to me, or other financial entanglements between other institutions, at some point money comes due. The government can't suspend all of it. Although, right, the easy answer is rent freeze. Nobody pays rent for 6 months. Cool. Pay them to stay home. Cool. I'm not fully certain of the federal government's ability to coordinate and implement such a policy, even though it would make sense, right? If you had a package, a relief package that throws rent and mortgage payments for literally everyone, hypothetically speaking, and coupled that with direct payments to people to where they could sustain themselves with food, power, whatever, then yeah, that would be an ideal solution. The other thing, though, interesting. You mind if I segue here for a second?
Go ahead.
So you've heard me argue personally. You've heard me argue since probably 2007 about the need for the democratization of energy, right? You've heard me tell the Germany story since probably 2009. Right now, all of our energy is produced, not all, a huge chunk of our energy is produced by centralized power plants that are subsidized or fully funded by the government at the state level. Right. And if they're nuclear, the federal level.
Before you go on, so, I would just like to say, if you would like to leave a comment, please comment, and I will read them off. If you have a question, go ahead and list it there. We'll do that maybe towards the end, or if you want to comment about something that we're talking about at the moment, feel free. Just wanted to get that in there, plug that real quick. Also, if you like the content, click like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And follow the channel. Thank you. All right, now back to energy.
Hang on, do we have viewers?
We currently have one viewer. I'm not sure who it is. It might be me. I don't know.
Yeah.
We had two. So
somebody
we have 6 playbacks. We have an average watch time of 7 minutes and 13 seconds. So
yeah, that's not bad. So with energy, right, most of our power is produced by centralized coal-fired power plants, right? There's a lot of natural gas production, and then regionally there's a lot of nuclear energy, right? Which, listen, bang for your buck, nuclear energy is where it's at, but the waste, nuclear waste, and maintenance and risk associated with those types of facilities is something we got to weigh carefully as a society going forward. That's all.
Aren't those risks very low?
In America, yeah.
And what about what it takes to recycle like solar panels and I don't even believe that the windmill the turbines are like, it's like very difficult to recycle that material. Like you use a lot of energy to recycle
carbon fiber. I don't know.
You use a lot of energy to get the product. But right. I know that like melting down, like the whole process of breaking down the solar panels is actually like it turns into a pretty toxic material. And I don't know, nuclear, it just seems like you can recycle it and use it on its own. Correct?
The biggest issue, the biggest issue with nuclear energy is that when you've got spent fuel, you've got spent fuel. I don't know that, to my knowledge, I've never heard.
So it is spent fuel. Yeah, okay.
It's spent fuel. It's got to be disposed of somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And like the
But
but
doesn't it take a lot less of it?
it does. It's the most efficient
Right.
energy production you can get, right?
Right.
Although it still has one fundamental flaw, and that it is centralized, right? It's produced in one place and distributed from there, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion, the safest way. You ever see? I liken it to I think it's like Iron Man 3. Do you remember Iron Man 3? Tony Stark's suit was like the nanotech. No, maybe it was when the Avengers stuff started. He had the nanotech suit, right? And somebody would shoot a hole in it, and then it would just nanotech,
Yeah.
not heal, but like cover up that spot.
Yeah.
Right. Energy production should be like that, right? It shouldn't be dependent on the core power plant sitting in Tony Stark's chest. If you could produce the energy in 1,000 or 1,000,000 different places with a solar panel on every home and an integrated grid, then when something goes wrong or something goes down, it's localized and manageable, almost like a viral outbreak, right? You can cut it off the problem and solve it. It also makes it harder to attack, right? It makes it harder to bring down. If you have a centralized power plant that controls the distribution and production of energy, that's my target, right? If I'm conducting an EW or a cyber attack on an area and I want to shut down all of Texas, I got to hit like 3 places the right way, but I only got to hit like 3 places, right?
Well, isn't the entire U.S. grid only like 4 central locations?
No. There's multiple power plants in every state. Every couple of counties there's a power plant.
Right. But
right?
there's like 4 regional. I believe. I don't know. I read this book called Lights Out, and it was essentially a.
Oh, you're talking about the control center.
Possibly.
Yeah. So energy production is done at various power plants, but because it's hard to transport electricity over huge distances, right? They got to produce it in more locations, right?
Right.
So the same idea applied. They're like, hey, we can't produce energy in Norfolk, Virginia, and send all of that energy reliably all the way up to DC, right? You lose too much in the transfer, right?
Yeah.
So they produce energy all up and down the East Coast there in the Delmarva, right? The Delaware, Maryland, Virginia Peninsula and area. So there's multiple production facilities in let's say, the Mid-Atlantic. But there are large regional control centers, and how they work, beyond the scope of my understanding completely. I am not an electrical engineer. But the idea was, they said, hey, we should probably make more power plants so we have energy in more places, right? That same principle still applies. It's just the method by which we produce it is cheaper and easier.
Right.
You're going to make me tell the German story. Here's the German story.
You're going to talk about I already know what you're going to talk about, but go ahead.
Yeah. So in 2006 or 2005, the government in Germany said, hey, listen, folks, we are just going to go ahead and decide we're moving on to renewable energy resources. They mandated something like 40% of all energy for every new construction building, at least residential home. 40% of their energy had to be produced from a renewable resource. They didn't dictate which one. They said, if you're in an area where geothermal is viable, take that. If you're in an area where the sun shines, take that. If you're in an area where the wind blows, take that. But you need to produce 40% of every new construction energy from a renewable resource. So they did. But what that did, in effect, was it moved the requirement for producing energy and purchasing the tie-in or the production capability off the individual, and it put it on the builders. So if you're a developer and you're going to build 100 homes, now you got to start looking at ways to put solar power on 100 homes, or tie in 100 homes into geothermal energy, or tie into the nearest wind farm for that 100 home development. So if that's what you're looking at doing, you as the developer got to start planning for that. Now, you're going to factor those costs, those additional costs, into what you spend. Your expenditures are going to go up 25% if it's a solar panel, right? Or maybe 10%. 25,000. That's it's 20. It's about 25%. So if your expenditures go up 25%, well, shit, you're going to pass that cost on the consumer. And that's where Republicans in America have argued against this sort of thing. We can't have costs go up 25%. That's insane, right? Well, hold on a second. What you've effectively done by putting that onus on the builder or developer rather than the individual homeowner is you've given the homeowner the ability to finance it all in, as if they were buying a house that already had a swimming pool built, right? It's cheaper, easier, and allows the person to see an immediate return on an outlay expenditure, right? So yes, I realize I'm going to spend 19% more on my home over the life of this loan, but I'm going to save 27% in energy production. Anyway, the Germans mandated this policy. It shifted the burden from the individual to the builder. It allowed for people to finance these sorts of things in. And in the long run, come the crash of 2007, 2008, allowed for their consumers to hold on to more of their money, even more than tax cuts would have in America, which didn't work, even more than a tax cut would have. The idea that you could produce your own power, at least 40% of it, that's enough to survive in short term, and save more of your money, made for higher consumer confidence, more liquidity across the economy, which meant they didn't take near as much of a hit during the 07, 08 housing crisis and economic recession that the rest of the world suffered from. What they effectively did was they found a way to strengthen their middle class in a way that couldn't be undermined by varying policies. And that's what we need to do, which brings me back to what we originally talked about. Why am I a Democrat? Because they argue for policies that do that. Yeah. That's just an energy related one, but there's 1,000 other ways to strengthen the middle class that they don't have to bear the shock of an economic recession any longer.
But see, a lot of people on the right, libertarians, Trump people, they would like to tell you that is the government overstepping its bounds and telling businesses what they can and cannot build. And to me, it's I understand their whole freedom argument, but at the same time, I look at the long run and how much freedom that whole program, the whole process, like all of that together, like moving forward, would actually provide more freedom for people, in my opinion, because you don't have to worry about if there's a crash into that, to 2030, whatever it is. Oh, I'm not gonna have any energy in my house. I'm not gonna have any power. Nope, you ain't got to worry about that. You've already saved up so much energy.
Republicans talk about being a slave to the government, right? Being shackled to the will of government, as if it's the worst thing in the world. When in reality, if you were to look at their personal finances, they are shackled to the will of credit card companies and Amazon and
absolutely
various other corporations. They just don't realize it. And
they don't realize it, or
they don't care. I don't know. But the point I'd like to make about this one is when it comes to energy democratization, right? You said, it gives you more financial freedom, right? That's the government enacting a policy that gives you more financial freedom,
right?
And when Republicans say, well, it's government overreach, it's government overstep, they always seem to gloss over the fact that the government is already doing that for the companies they favor, right?
Right.
If Republicans really took an honest look at themselves, they'd recognize that they've been lobbying, the government for policies for decades that have helped increase subsidies to coal-fired power plants, to coal production companies, right? So
well, that's my whole thing. It's like
first 100 days.
It's like the government funds all different kinds of programs, and why wouldn't we fund the next big thing? Like,
why wouldn't we fund the one? Why don't we fund? Here's why.
The Green New Deal, in other words. But anyway.
Well, here's why we don't fund it. Because when you provide subsidies to coal producing companies, coal miners, coal-fired power plants, natural gas producers, or various other energy production companies,
you get votes.
You're No, you get money.
Yeah.
Those people have a lobby, right?
Oh yeah.
You got to, as with every problem, ask who benefits. When subsidies go to coal producing or natural gas producing companies, those people take some of that money, they package it into a lobbying firm. That lobbying firm goes to Washington and meets with congressmen and says, support this and we'll fund your campaign with $50,000 this month, right?
Right.
When they support policies that, like the Germans did, that democratize energy, there's no guarantee anybody's going to put money in their campaign coffers for the next cycle, right? Because
Right.
Instead of it providing a benefit to 10 rich people, it's providing a benefit to 100,000 regular people, and there's no kickback or indirect kickback for that. And the last thing I'll say about the energy policy is, if I were Joe Biden the first 100 days, I'd get on the phone with every single governor in America and say, I'm going to push forward this green energy policy. It's going to include this, 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 and this, right? Whatever the particulars might be. Let experts, economists, and electrical engineers sort that shit out. But I would say this to them. I'm also going to start advocating for a reduction in the subsidies provided to your state partner energy production companies, say like MLG&W, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Virginia Power or Georgia Power. These companies, they're already getting huge sums of money from the government anyway. If you take that money away, and that's the money you invest in green energy and the democratization of energy, guess what? The cost, if you were to pull the government subsidies from those companies, the cost of your energy production would skyrocket.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the argument you make to a Republican, be like, all right, fine, we're just going to stop all government subsidies and then see who wins, right?
Right.
The scales have been tilted in favor of polluting and centralized power plants for decades.
Why not?
You really want a free and fair
why
market?
not? Yeah. Why not reallocate those taxes, that tax money, that revenue, and invest in something, proactive. Something that's better for humanity, not something that's that's why I call the Republican Party a death cult. But it is. It is.
Well, so I wish I could talk to somebody. I got a friend who's going to school when she leaves the Army to be a psychologist, and the psychology of Republicans just trips me out.
Wait. Speaking of psychology, okay, hold on. You know Mark Meadows, right?
Yeah.
White House Chief of Staff.
Acting White House Chief of Staff. Yeah.
Yeah. He just tweeted out 13 minutes ago. Big news in Nevada. A judge has allowed Nevada Republicans to present findings of widespread voter fraud in a December 3rd hearing. Americans will now hear evidence from those who saw firsthand what happened, a critical step for transparency and riveting illegal ballots. Stay tuned. They're still going on. Will it ever end?
I don't even know what to make of it.
Is this not an affront on our democracy, though? I love how I tweeted out the other day something, I said something. It was a quote tweet of Donald Trump. He said something, and I said, like, you're a disgrace to our democracy. And then someone we know tweeted back at me saying, he said something about, like, that's ironic coming from someone that advocates for socialism. And I was just like, what? Just like,
I don't understand what your average Republicans.
Why is
socialism is just idiotic?
Why is everything that is not a Trump Republican's viewpoint a socialist or communist or?
Because they don't understand what socialism is.
They really don't.
They really don't. And don't get me wrong. Listen, if you were to gauge everything by Central and South American socialism from the 80s, then yeah, I get why you think socialism is bad. But those were also massively corrupt states with no checks and balances.
Yeah, what about Scandinavia?
All we're talking about when we talk about socialism is basically just higher taxes and more programs to help people. That's literally all we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you want to call that socialism? Like, we're not talking. Okay, some people are talking about direct payments, like minimum guaranteed
What you mean, like
income,
UBI?
where the government. Yeah,
Like,
yeah. What's
like
it
Andrew
stand
Yang?
for? It's yeah. They're talking about like just paying people a minimum amount of money every month, and I think that's
The dividends.
in America. That's a bridge too far, right? At
Yeah.
least while we're running debts and deficits, that's a bridge too far,
Yeah.
right? But if you were to tell the population that say, hey, look, every time we had $1 trillion surplus, that money would be paid out as a dividend to taxpayers, starting with the lowest brackets and going up, right? That is effectively the redistribution of wealth, but it would ensure that you don't see the growth in government. So small government conservatives should be like, all right. It would ensure purchasing power for the people who spend their money the most, right? Poor people, their spending power would go up, and it would spur economic growth. It would also have the indirect effect of having those people who usually tend to pay least amount of attention to the machinations of the political, sort of landscape and how it works. They'd start paying attention. It's like, all right, debts and deficit do matter, because if we run surplus and don't have a debt, I get a payday. I'm going to support policies that do that. That's how you sell that to a Republican, to a small government, quote unquote, conservative. But that's neither here nor there. That would never happen. It's never going to work. This is America, where people vote on emotion rather than pragmatism. So it is what it is.
Well, I've noticed recently that it seems like year after year, at least under Obama, that's when I was really paying attention to politics. First started paying attention to politics, and one of the biggest lines one of the biggest things that you heard the Republicans talk about was the debt and the deficit. The debt and the deficit. The Democrats want to spend all this money. And then what did Obama do? He cut the deficit, and he got it down to $500 billion a year.
While also spurring economic growth under Republican-administered austerity measures. So
right.
Let's be clear.
And then Trump gets into office, does tax cuts for the rich, where the 83% of the benefits go to the top 1%. The tax cuts aren't permanent for the middle class. They're permanent for the top 1%. And because of this 83% going to the top 1%, the debt skyrocketed, or the deficit went up. We were approaching $1 trillion for like the first time ever. And then COVID happened, and we're definitely gonna hit that.
Yeah, now we're running $3 trillion deficit.
Right. So, what are your thoughts on like Medicare for all?
So,
or just like a single
right now,
or just like a single universal healthcare system, single payer healthcare system, or something like Germany has, where it's like a mixture of both.
So I'm opposed to a Medicare for all or single payer just right now. I don't think we have the economic wherewithal to sustain that because of diminishing returns. There are not unless we have massive tax increases on the rich and corporations and a bunch of other people, right? Like, it's just, in my mind, it's too large a mountain to climb at this juncture. What I do think we should have in the meantime.
But what about when we're spending $49 trillion over a 10-year period on private health care, and we could spend $32 trillion on Medicare for all over a 10-year period?
Yes,
theoretically,
it's the burden though on who's paying that, right? So right now, a rich white person in America thinks, yeah, I may be paying a lot for healthcare, but it's my healthcare. I'm paying for it. I'm choosing. What they don't recognize is that really an insurance company, unless they can pay cash for everything at the hospital, an insurance company is really who's choosing.
Right.
And that's, so if you remember Sarah Palin and her stupid fucking death panels, right? Turns out death panels have been around for decades, except for it wasn't a government bureaucrat making
It's called the size of your wallet.
It was an insurance company bureaucrat, like a middle management dude who
Middleman.
works in a cubicle. Some dude who works in a cubicle and wears a brown suit to work was making that choice for you. Yes, you qualify for this treatment. No, you don't qualify.
The ridiculous for-profit middleman.
That's right. And so while I think the ideal end state is a balanced budget and increased expenditure for Medicare or Medicare for all or a single payer system,
Obviously.
I think the way to get there is a public option. Show people government subsidized or government provided or paid healthcare works. Tax rich people to help pay for it. Yes, it's a redistribution of wealth, but it increases the purchasing power of the people who are most likely to spend money. So that's good, right? Get to a public option, show people it works, and in the meantime, you get to stop writing off. Hospitals get to stop writing off all the. For example, I should back up and say, before the Affordable Care Act, if a 22-year-old perfectly healthy dude walks across the street, gets hit by a car, doesn't have health insurance, doesn't die, he's going to go to a hospital. They're going to treat him for everything they need to stabilize him, and then they're going to take that $500,000 bill and they're going to write it off. Then the government's going to lose the revenue associated with that the taxes they were going to pay on that, right? So the government was indirectly subsidizing everybody's health care anyway, but indirectly. So what was cut out of that in that indirect loop? It was profit, so that the hospital staff still got paid, the doctors still made their money, the hospital group that oversees the 7 hospitals, they still got their executive bonuses, right? So that money got cut out for people to still turn a profit. You cut all of that shit out and just have a single payer public option, then people could go, this guy's covered, we're going to treat him. This guy's covered, we're going to treat him. This lady's covered, we're going to treat him. Everybody gets treatment that's necessary, even when they can't afford insurance themselves. What does that leave you with? That leaves you with people who can afford private insurance paying for private insurance. No longer would we be cutting out profits from the people who can't pay from tax write-offs. So it wouldn't be coming from the government anymore. It'll be coming from those rich people. And those rich people are going to figure out real quick when the government ain't subsidizing your health care indirectly that it goes way up. Right now, they talk about this is what people spend on health care, but that's without acknowledging how many people don't have health insurance and how many hospitals are writing off what they have to spend to stabilize uninsured people with cancer or car accidents, etc. Granted, that's an overly simplistic viewpoint. It is also based on only my knowledge and understanding of how the healthcare system works. My wife's understanding is even better, although far more detailed and in the weeds because she deals with insurance companies every day.
Yeah. And that's an argument for like Medicare for all and just a single payer system is getting all that administrative crap just get it out of the way. It'd
be really great if my wife didn't have to call an insurance company ever again. She'd just call the board of health insurance or whatever they want to call it in the future and be like, hey, hello, is this the Obama department? That's what we should call it. Is this the Obama department? Yes, it is.
Just to piss people off.
Here's this person's social security number. This is the procedure they had done. Okay, it's paid. Done.
No, see, that's something that I think people, like, it's funny. I think it was, like, Jimmy Kimmel. He did, like, this little thing one time, and he went out and asked people. He's like, asked them if they like Obamacare, and then asked them if they like the Affordable Care Act. And then they would, the same person, almost, like, every single time would just be like, no, I'm not a fan of that there Obamacare. They're like, okay, what do you think about the Affordable Care Act? Oh, yeah, I like that. That helped my brother out down in Mississippi. Whatever, And it's just like, they're just a name. And I think that's a problem with, like, a lot of this stuff where they're talking about, like, the name of things, like defund the police. It's like, oh, that's kind of like that's going to turn, like, everybody off, that type of name. Like, most people don't want to get rid of the police or defund the police. They just want them to be held accountable for their actions. That's all. Like,
Reforms are necessary. I don't know if you saw.
And reform. Yeah, also reform. But
I have a sort of a personal opinion on this one, in that I know a lot of people that are police officers. Quite a few of them. I commissioned with some. I've worked with dudes in the military who went on to become cops.
yeah, one of them was at my house a few weeks ago.
Who's that? Jordan?
Yeah.
Jordan was at your house a few weeks ago?
Yeah, we held a cop stop. And
What do
that's
you mean a cop stop?
so cop stop is like you get all the you make a bunch of food. Well, Ashley made the food. You make all this food, and we've done it 3 times now. We do the late night shift, the graveyard shift, which their lunch is 1 to 3 in the morning. But they'll all like pull up in the cove at 1 o'clock in the morning, and we've got like food out there, and we serve them food and stuff. So.
Wow, so Jordo came by?
Yeah, Jordo was one of them.
Oh, well,
I was like,
I hadn't talked to Jordo in a little while.
I was like, Jordo. That's what he said. He said y'all haven't talked in a while. But yeah.
I should hit him up. Damn, I really should hit him up. I can't believe it. How's he doing?
He's doing
Does
well.
he look thin? Is he fatter? Because he's got kids now.
I can't. I guess he's in pretty good shape. Because I mean, he looked kind of bulky, but obviously he has the bulletproof vest on. So
Yeah, I need to hit Jordo up. I'm glad. Oh man, I got a nosebleed. I was wondering what was bothering me.
Are you getting a nosebleed on air right now?
Well, I had a pimple inside my nose. What the fuck you want me to say? I had a pimple inside my nose, and I just went and blew my nose, and now it's bleeding. So. Give me 90 seconds. Let me go deal with this. I'll be right back.
Let me ask you something real quick before you go.
Yeah.
We are at hour number 1. Do we want to take 5?
Let's take 5, and I'll give you 15 after that, and then I got to call it a night.
Okay.
All right. I got 05 wake up tomorrow morning. I'll be right back.
All right. All right, guys. We're gonna be right back here in a sec. We'll see you here in a minute. Oh wait, what just happened? I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm not even gonna try it. I'm just gonna say, okay. See you back in a sec. I'm pretty sure I just broke something. Just kidding. All right, let's get this back. There we go.
I'm back.
Hold on. Okay, now I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, where were we?
I don't know, but I'd like to move on to let's we skipped around quite a bit. We've talked a little bit of policy. I want to ask you a particular question because I feel like you would be able to provide me some thoughts on this. This is I heard it in a conversation the other day, and somebody said something. Why didn't we have some type of why don't we treat the virus like a threat, like an enemy threat, and like we were being invaded by some kind of threat, and have like a military style response. Not using the military, just like I can't particularly remember, but how would the military have handled, or through your expertise, how would you have handled the threat of COVID-19?
Well, first thing I would have done, if I were making decisions, first thing I would have done was what Trump did, but I'd have done a lot sooner. Right. So let's go on the premise that Trump knew at the end of November, before the rest of us, that this was going to come to America.
Well, he knew for sure, like January 28th, that it was already here, and that it spread easily through the air.
Mm-hmm.
He said that to Bob Woodward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if I had known when he probably knew, which was probably sometime around the end of November, I would have quietly, while everybody was not paying attention at Christmas, and everybody was at home for Christmas, I would have suspended all flights from China. I would have instituted a massive 100% testing policy and quarantine policy for all inbound flights from Asian countries, or any flights, and they have the ability to do this, any flights that, connected through Europe but came from Asia. And I'd have shut a lot of things down. I mean, a lot of things. Travel. I also would have instituted the Defense Production Act and figured out how do we get rapid tests produced non-stop around the clock. And
so
I
kind
also
of like
hired somebody.
South Korea model.
Yeah. And the other thing is, from a political perspective, knowing that it would be tied to if this turned into a pandemic, although nobody could have predicted it would have been this bad before it ever came to America, right? Like, nobody could have ascertained the scope of this virus.
Well, I would argue that when we saw it in Italy, what it was doing to Italy, that's when I was like, okay, this is obviously going to be an issue here, because
it was already here by that point.
Right, but seeing what it was doing to Italy, I was kind of shocked at the lack, or the absolute slow response that we had to addressing the virus. Like it was just like, okay, we're just gonna wait until we get up to tens of thousands of cases, and then we'll start really worrying about it.
So what I would have done is I would have invoked the DPA, not just for testing, but for essential things. Like there's a run on toilet paper and paper towels. Cool. We can start producing those. I'd have given 2 weeks warning to everybody and said, look, get what you need to sustain yourself for a solid 21 days. And during this upcoming 21-day period, there will be no deliveries. There will be no trips to the grocery store. There will be nothing except for fire and police services. Like everything I would have tried to shut down. I'd have convinced every governor in the country. Every single thing will be shut down. Nobody goes outside. Enforced like lockdowns. And I know it seems anti-American to do something like that, but if this pandemic teaches us anything, it's that sometimes draconian measures are required, because we have 250,000 people that are now dead because of this virus.
Yeah, and
so
we're having like a 9/11 every 2 or 3 days now. So,
and the unfortunate part is so I'd say I'd give a warning, like, yo, you got 2 weeks to get everything you need to sustain yourself for 21 days. Do it now. The unfortunate part of that is you're going to cause people to push out to get stuff. And in the near term, you're going to see a spike, right? But if that spike goes from 3,500 to 9,500 cases, right? Or maybe even 50,000 cases, and then everybody locks down for 21 days, fully locks down for 21 days, then if hypothetically nobody had contact outside their household for 21 days, the virus would stop, plain and simple. That's what I don't get about.
But then you also have to keep the country closed from other countries.
Right. No, everything's locked down. After 9/11, planes didn't fly for weeks.
But I'm talking about after those 21 days.
So yeah, after the 21 days, you have to have, no international flights. Then you have to have what Australia
what a lot of places have done is you fly in, you spend 14
quarantine.
Mandatory quarantine. You come into our country, mandatory 14 days. After that, you're good. Which I just read something where the CDC is trying to they're about to recommend lowering the quarantine from 14 days to a shorter time span.
I'm not a doctor. I would think that, as they gain knowledge about, the virus and how long it lasts and is transmissible in the body, then, sure, if that's their expert opinion, that's fine. Republicans would argue, hey, we can't afford to put Australia pays for everybody to quarantine that comes in. The government pays. You get off a plane, you go into quarantine, they serve your meals, they pay your hotel, all that. They effectively nationalize the necessary services to provide that. And Republicans tell you, we can't do that in this country. It's too big. It's too much. No way. It can't be done. But what they never acknowledge is that the cost for that to institute said policy would only grow with each day. The sooner you do it, if you do it tomorrow, it'll cost X amount. If you do it the day after, it's going to cost X amount plus one, right? It's only going to cost more because it will be more people. And it's difficult to articulate such a concept to large scale to a huge portion of the population. It's really difficult to get people who, listen, you've seen interviews on TV at Trump supporters and shit. Trying to convince them of anything that takes more than 3 steps to understand is just impossible, right? Can't do it. If you say 3 sentences without mentioning George Soros, they don't know what the shit you're talking about. So
they don't.
So trying to convince them that, hey, listen, we need a well-articulated, detailed plan to contain the spread, provide necessary services for quarantine, test everybody we possibly can, and lock down specific direct or indirect flights into this country so that we can do this and then understand that numbers will increase in the near term, then begin to decrease, and then the real work begins of locking down the country. They can't fathom.
But why Japan?
And if they can.
Japan didn't have such strict lockdowns, but they've enforced a national mask mandate. And they did lower capacity to gyms and restaurants and any, overly crowded areas. And
Japan is a collectivist country, plain and simple. Japan is steeped in a culture where people take action to benefit the greater good.
Yeah, virtually everyone. Yeah, virtually everyone was wearing a mask. Like it's just like
not just wearing a mask, but their culture has been. If you go all the way back to Imperial Japan in the 1940s, you know, they didn't even bat an eye when they had nationwide policies to help sustain the war effort, right? Like we did that too, but like not to the scale they did, right? They have constantly, like for thousands of years, that country has done what was necessary to sustain the greater good.
It's a culture.
And yeah, it's a cultural thing. But to be fair, you got to understand, a lot of the problems we face in this country are things we can't help. You know, we talk about socialism and how it affects, you know, how it's instituted in Scandinavian countries. Well, guess what Scandinavian countries are? They are massively white. They are homogenous culture. They're all from the same descendants. They all got the same name, right? They all believe the same things. It's easier to get a large population to adhere to a shared set of values. They all come from the same place. They all believe in the same God. They all worship at the same places. It's a lot easier to convince those people of something than it is in a country like ours, which is a melting pot, an amalgamation of massive different, you know, variance in culture and.
I mean, and that's the beauty of America, though. You know, it's like
it is. It's our cultural strength, but it is also an obstacle to be overcome when you could take any 10 people randomly selected from around the country and have 10 different viewpoints on a particular issue because we don't believe in the same things, we don't know the same people, we don't tell our kids the same stories, we don't call a Coke can the same thing, right? We don't call a shopping cart by the same name. It's America is a vast group of nations built together into one country, right? Into one state. And it's a sociological, you know, analyst dream and to look at trends and the way things shake out in this country, whether it's policies or beliefs or culture. It's fascinating, but at the same time, it is a policy obstacle, and there's no two ways about that. Particularly when you have the largest minority group in this country was, you know, brought here under, you know, the auspices of America's original sin, which is slavery.
Right.
Like, if you don't believe that they're going to react, that, you know, that Black people descended from slaves brought unwillingly, you know, in bondage to this country are going to react to certain issues differently than you, then you're not looking at things the right way. Right? If you can't grant them the variance in their opinion because you just think they're wrong, then, you know, it's going to be tough to find middle ground and find a policy that works for both of you.
Well, see, and that's the
and the
problem
fact that we've
with
done it this long is good.
But that's the problem with well, that's the beauty and one of the issues with, you know, the United States that we have to, you know, confront is that you have free speech. It's awesome. It's probably the single greatest right that any country's ever provided its citizens. But then you get things like QAnon. And you get people that fall into those rabbit holes, and then like they literally can't believe anything factual, or they constantly just like move the goalpost. You bring an issue to them, and they say, like you say, "Hey, COVID's a bad thing, right?" No, COVID's not real. It's like, yeah, it is. Look, my aunt got COVID and she died from it. Okay, but she was also old with comorbidities or something. Yeah, that's how most people die from this. No, only 6% of people die from the actual virus itself. 94% die from comorbidities because they had comorbidities and then they got the virus. I'm like, yeah, that's how viruses work, dumbass. But then it's just like it's completely frustrating, and they have like this completely separate reality. and it
I
just
know.
boggles
Yeah,
my mind.
well, to me, that's a fundamental problem with the non-standardization of education in America.
Yeah.
But that's for a different podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this one is about time to wrap up.
Yeah, we got about an hour and 20 minutes in, I think. So we did pretty good for a first one. I'm sorry I couldn't give you the 3 hours you were asking for, but it is a Tuesday night. We can do this again tomorrow if you're available.
I'll have to see. I'm not sure about tomorrow night, but maybe this weekend.
I got a 4-day coming up, so.
Same here. So.
Yeah,
that'd be
Thanksgiving
nice.
weekend.
What
I'll
about
have bourbon in the house too. We can really make it lit. That'd be fun.
What about Friday during the day?
We can probably do that. Yeah.
All right,
Mid-afternoon
cool.
or something.
Sounds good. We can actually get into Joe Biden and the future of America. And
yeah, talking about policies we'd like to see. That'd be great.
Yeah, I would very much enjoy that. Kind of, I wanted this discussion to be about 2020, and I've kind of just over 2020. But
yeah, same.
And I really hope people are safe this holiday. I've already saw that there's 3 million people traveling for some reason, but that's just all it's got to do is just spread the virus even more than Trump rallies. So it is what it is. And then I didn't even think about it today, but I was listening to Gary Parrish and Jeff Calkins, and they were talking about college kids coming home for the holidays, and like just all these kids coming home from the holidays, what they might be bringing. It's just like, it's gonna be a rough winter.
There's going to be a massive explosion in about 2 weeks.
I'll give it 3, but yes.
Massive explosion.
Yeah, 3 weeks to a month, it's going to be just everybody's going to get it.
Absolutely brutal.
We're already at we just surpassed like 11 million cases.
Well,
and that's known cases.
Yeah, that's the total cases. It's the inflection points that concern me. And if you look at this year, just look at a graph. There's a spike about 2 weeks after every holiday: Labor Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July, Halloween, now Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving's the big one because everybody's going home to see who? Grandma and Grandpa.
Grandma and Grandpa.
That's when the ICUs are going to be flooded.
Yeah, they're already
going to be maxed out.
Yep, they're already packed. ICUs are already packed.
It's going to be bad.
South Dakota is at a 50% infection rate.
Yeah, I just don't understand that one. But we, in this household, we're staying home. And, we had the hard conversation now. Our grandpa, he called me today, and he 100%, he gets it. He's like, no, stay where you are. And we know why. And that's the right decision.
But I'm glad he's COVID free. So
yeah, 20 days later, COVID free and recovering. Jesus Christ, if that wasn't a close call. But he's had a few of them over the years, hasn't he?
But that's one reason that I'm just like, I can't do it. Like, Ashley and I are staying home. Like, we're doing our own Thanksgiving. So
Candace had to have a conversation with her daddy. He had a heart attack earlier this year. That was his second one. You've had 2 heart attacks, you have diabetes, and you're in your 60s. We're not coming to see you. You need to stay home. Don't contact anybody.
Yeah.
Come in contact with anybody. It's just too dangerous.
That's the thing. Like,
imagine being the one that gave that disease to somebody if it killed them? No. Anyway, It's 21:45. Tell Dad to call me. I tried to call him twice this weekend.
Okay. I'll do that.
If you talk to him, tell him to call me.
Okay. All right, brother. Well, this was fun. I appreciate you coming on, and I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, let me know when works for you, and we'll carve out another 90 minutes and do another one. I can talk about this shit all day.
Yes,
Thanks for
sir.
having me on.
All right, yeah, man.
Take care. Love
See ya.
you. Bye.
Love you. Bye. Well, that happened. All right. So that was fun, guys. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and I'm looking forward to the next one that I have with DW, my brother. Um, if you guys liked what you saw, or if you like to comment, if you would like us to talk about a certain topic for the next show, please leave a comment below. And if you like what you saw, then hit that like button and that subscribe button and that notification bell and follow the channel, man. All right. I love you guys. Stay safe. Happy Thanksgiving. If you travel, please be safe. I recommend you don't, but if you do, just please be safe. And but yeah,